And tonight we're going to talk about Fielding Estate Winery, and they have excellent wines, excellent winemaker. They are a winery that have been in operation for over 15 years, and we're going to be lucky enough to taste 4 wines today, all of which just came through the Wine Align Awards, and every one of them is a gold or a silver today, because they do fantastic things. It's a sustainable winery. They care for the earth, they care for people, they give back to their community, and it's fantastic wine, which is really why we're here, right? So I do want to talk real briefly about each of the wines, and we'll taste a little bit, and maybe talk about kind of why we're here and what we do, and what makes it so great, each one of them. And you'll notice, opposite to typical, I came into Steph and I said, is it okay we start with the rosé instead of the white? Because the white's a little bit heavier today, and I'll tell you why. But the first wine, before we taste it or talk about it, I just want to say, rosé, not unlike the second wine, which is a Riesling, has been tarnished a little bit in years gone by bad wine. The rosés of the 70s and 80s, the Sutterholm, the Beringers, we know there was White Zinfandel, high sugar, and the same as of Riesling, right? The Blue Nun, the Black Tower. I believe it is a travesty that some of these wines ruined what we think of these wines, when really those 2 wines are some of the best wines grown. They're 2 of sommeliers' favorite wines. They're 2 of the wines that pair most beautifully with food, and we'll talk about why. And I'm really happy to say that both of them are experiencing a great revival. So starting with rosé, that is absolutely a great revival. If you're unsure of how a rosé comes to be, there's many ways, but most typically now, great rosés are made pretty much the same way that a red wine is made. So inside a white wine and a red wine, if you peeled off the skin, the pulp inside is identical. It's a clear pulp. However, if you're making a red wine, you take the red grapes, you put them in the tank, and you let them what we call macerate. So it sits on the pulp, and the skins provide tannin and structure and flavor, of course, and most importantly, color. So if you're making a red wine, you might have it sit for 15 days, 10 days, 7 days. If you're making a rosé, you put it in and let it sit for maybe 5 hours, right? So what happens is just a little bit of the color and flavor and tannin will seep into the wine. So it truly is the best of both worlds, because you're gonna have some of that, like I say, the tannin, the color, the flavor, the body of a red wine, but you still have the freshness and the zest and the acidity also too of a white wine. So it really is wonderful. It's a perfect pairing food wine, and maybe more importantly, it's a great patio sipper, right? So this wine here is the Fielding Rosé. Take a smell of this guy. It's just gorgeous. The aromatics are beautiful. You're still getting a lot of that red fruit, right? The raspberry and delicious fruit. But there is also some of the citrus that you're getting. It's really beautiful. It has a nice high acidic level. There's just a short maceration. If you looked at this wine up in the light, it's quite a light rosé. So it is a little bit similar to what we know as maybe like a Provence style. So it's not heavy, like, you know, you might get Rioja that is a rosé that's really rich and heavy. It's much lighter, and it's beautiful. It's just got a perfect balance. So let's take a sip of this guy. Did you like that, Jack? I like it very much. I want you to, for a second, take a sip of this wine. Let it surround your mouth. Let it get around your cheeks, behind your teeth. Take one swallow, if you're brave enough. Look down. Don't re-swallow it. See what happens there in your mouth. The romantic term for doing what I just did is sometimes called the spit test. Because if you notice, it really makes you salivate. In fact, if you weren't careful, it might fall out of your mouth. So there's some really great things happening there, and that really is telling you that it's really, really fresh. It's literally mouth-watering, right? It's generating your saliva glands. It's telling you this wine has great acidity. It's gonna be perfect with food. We have really nice acidity in all these wines. They're all food wines, and they're gonna make your food taste better. And if your wine plus your food make an even greater entity, you've got the whole thing made, right? So that's a delicious wine. We're gonna move on to the next one. So Fielding Estate Winery has a few Rieslings on their docket. I have to admit that this one here is one of my favorites. It is the Fielding Estate bottled Riesling. So it's, of course, bottled at the estate. It comes from a couple different blocks. And I love, in a good Riesling, that unmistakable petrol smell. I love it. I think that's why I love Riesling, and that makes a good Riesling. It also has lots of citrus. It has lemon, lime, grapefruit, like lots of good things going on. But I love that petrol. So let's take a sip. Check for the acidity level in this. It's gorgeous. Do you love it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're getting some sweetness on it, right? You can smell that orange blossom. You can smell some of that delicious fruit. This is when Riesling really comes out to play. One of the things about Riesling is it could be made in a style that's searingly dry, very like mouth-puckeringly dry, and it can be made literally in ice wine, lusciously sweet, and every layer in between. Unfortunately, we can't always find really well-balanced Riesling, and people always think they're too sweet. This wine is actually quite sweet. It's considered off-dry. Some Rieslings have, like I say, ice wines, like 200, 300 grams of sugar per liter. This is 19, so it's higher than most still wines, most good still wines, let's say, but it's perfectly balanced by the acidity, right? So the sweetness and the acidity really are in harmony here. So this wine, amazing with food, amazing for, again, patio sipping, or let's face it, sipping anywhere. Yeah. Yes, I think that this wine is so refreshing. I just love it. Okay, moving on to the reds, and again, I'll come by and chat in greater detail after. So this third wine, I'm gonna say a caveat is it is one of my favorite. It is one of my favorite from Fielding Estates Winery, and it is one of my favorite globally. It's a Cabernet Franc. So I am a believer that Ontario does 3 wines absolutely amazingly. They do Chardonnays really well, particularly unoaked. They do Rieslings really well, and they do Cabernet Franc really well. And when I say they do it really well, they make them really well, but we also have optimal growing and conditions for them. We have, like I said, that nice limestone bench. These wines come from the Beamsville bench. It's just gorgeous. It's a limestone plateau that literally you could sit on the patio at Fielding Winery and you look out over the Great Lakes. Like, it is absolutely stunning. But Cabernet Franc, it's near and dear to my heart, because I especially think that it is grown perfectly in Ontario. It is a Bordeaux wine. It's a Bordeaux blend, a grape that goes into Bordeaux blends, but it also is really, really reputed for the wines that come out of the Loire Valley, right? A Chinon. Ontario rocks this wine. So, if you haven't had a good Cabernet Franc before, you need to start, because it is so beautiful and it is such a gorgeous food wine. It has high acidity, but it has great fruit. It has spice. It may not be as, I usually say slutty, but it may not be as fruity and over the top as what we know of, like a Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, and Findel, what have you, because it is really, really a little bit more muted, but the flavor profile is high. It's really delicious. So let's take a smell of this guy. Oh, amazing, right? There's cherry, there's chocolate, there's vanilla, but there is, when you taste it, go for it. feel around your mouth. Feel those tannins, right? That chalkboard on the side of your cheeks, on the roof of your mouth. That is getting that mouth ready for some great food. This is gonna cut into a steak so beautifully, right? It is a gorgeous, gorgeous wine. I was lucky enough to just drink this with Stephanie's bacon-wrapped, cheese-stuffed beets. And the sum was definitely greater than the parts. Like, between those, it was amazing. If you haven't had, it is, yes. If you haven't had Cabernet Franc and good Cabernet Franc, please put that into your cellar. Put that into your dinner vocabulary because it really is amazing. And we are such creatures of habit. We gravitate to what we know, what we like, what we bought before. This is something we should be buying a lot of. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Cheers.
Stan says it would never make it to the cellar.
Right? So this fourth wine that we're gonna do tonight, I love this wine. So it's called Red Conception. This is a true Bordeaux blend. So in Bordeaux, we were talking about this earlier, the grapes that make a Bordeaux blend, even though, you know, in Europe, we name the place more than the grape. So Bordeaux is typically Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, Carmenere, and Malbec. This wine has all of those except for the Carmenere. So it is a true Bordeaux blend. We were talking earlier about now they've added new blends and new wines because of global warming. So Touriga Nacional and new wines have been added, but this is a classic Bordeaux blend. This particular one is about 49% Merlot, so it has a real great berry. There's lots of black currant. And again, I just said the sum is greater than the parts because the winemaker, Richie, makes this wine and he will make each of them in their own barrels. They use French oak. They do a lot of aging for both these reds. And for this particular one, I really wish I had his job because what he will do is he will take all the individual varietals, mix them together in various combinations over and over until he has a perfect blend. So that's amazing because that will really make the wine great but different every year because depending on the climate, depending on what's happening in the vineyard, the rain, the sun, whatever, he can adjust that to find the best expression of those varietals. Some years he'll have more of something, some years he'll have more of something else, and also he may not use particular varietals, right? So again, we're really capturing the best of all worlds. My last thing that I want to say about this wine that I think is very cool, years ago I was told that it's called Red Conception because as Fielding was growing and needing more vineyard plots and more vineyard plots and more vineyard plots, there was one plot that they thought was absolutely idyllic for growing grapes. But the problem is it had been a paved over parking lot from years and years and years ago. And the story goes that more than just great wine was conceived in that parking lot. So they cleverly called this wine Red Conception, and it's delicious. It's beautiful. It has such a lengthy but smooth finish. It has that chocolate and vanilla from the French oak. It's just beautiful. Do we love this? You do like this? Good. Well, I think, unless anybody has any group questions, I might end there, but I will circulate a little bit if you have any questions or need me to, you know, sample your own wine at your table.
Do you have a favorite, Heather, of the four that are on the table?
I have to say the Cabernet Franc.
Yes, that's our favorite.
Good. I think that, again, Cabernet Franc is one of the best wines grown in Niagara, and it is absolutely a tremendous expression that comes out of Fielding. It's beautiful. And again, I will encourage you, if you do have some in front of you, get some food in front of you. I like to drink your wine, have a bite of food, go back and drink the wine again, marry those flavors. It is just beautiful.